Hello, I'm Runya, aka Media Adaptation. Welcome back to our 12 Days of Christmas. Yeah, IRL is starting to get a little overwhelming, so going to redo a few of our older videos. I know it's a little cheap, but sadly it's all we can do right now. We'll try and catch up and try to get to some of our newer ones, but hopefully you guys still enjoy it. With the upcoming release of Fnaf Security Breach, we've been asked to go back and take a look at the original books, starting with their first, Silver Eyes, made at the end of 2015, which would put it right after Fnaf 4, the final chapter, and Sister Location, that I believe came out about a half a year later. Silver Eyes reimagines the original lore of the story, and I believe it was originally meant as a draft for the long-awaited movie that's been stalled out for years now. It's also the first time we're given some character names, like the infamous Purple Guy. But can looking back at the story predict any real revelation, or has the story changed so much that it's long since been retconned? And after reading this book, I was wondering how I was going to make a video on it, and still make it visually interesting with just having the cover. And while just editing this, it turns out that last year they made a graphic novel. So yay! But it's kinda terrible. Aside from the fact that everyone looks like they're from a Harry Partridge cartoon, there's a complete lack of consideration to details from the book. Like how the characters look nothing like their counterparts, and the three set of robot dolls. The unicorn was said to be much taller, about the size of a child or about a teenager, and could ride around on a little track. The bunny, Theodore, was kinda grayish, and would sit on a chair and wave its arms. There's just so much little nitpicks that keep driving you insane as you read it. So basically the plot involves the missing children's incident, which led to the location's closure. Which again kinda makes your head hurt, cause in the games, they simply went to this new location with the toy animatronics from Fnaf 2 before originally coming back to the older locations. But just ignore that detail. Anyway, the six friends are brought back to the town of Hurricane, Utah, as the parents of the kid who went missing decide to make a scholarship in honor of their son Michael. And after attending the service, they go back to where Freddy's used to stand and find that a mall was built in its place. So they decide to still have a look around for old time's sake, and find out that the mall is actually built around the pizzeria, and the place was preserved in time, and they all reminisce about the old days. It's especially important for our main character, Charlotte Emily, aka Charlie, the daughter of Henry, the person who built the old animatronics. Oh yeah, remember Theodore? Classic Bonnie was actually based on his design. So again, the graphic novel seems like someone was only given the cliff notes and never actually read the entire book. Oh, and it's full of pacing problems, which we'll get to later. Anyway, the story's broken down into them revisiting the pizzeria and flashbacks to her past, which also highlights a lot of other strange things. As we know, looking back at the story, the animatronics were given life by the souls of the dead children, which the purple guy stuffed inside them to hide. And the agony of pain became the essence later known as Remnant. And it's interesting how the story tries to explain this, and it basically boils down to psychic imprints. How energy from emotions can be left on items. I also bring this up because, for some reason, Foxy's endoskeleton had it long before it was completed. And it could be the reason why his animatronic was always broken or under repair. Oh, and another thing, the animatronics are slightly bigger than a normal human. How the F is Foxy's endoskeleton stuffed up in that little nook up there? The book describes it more like an auto shop where hooks and chains keep him suspended, like how you normally change out a car motor. And god, I keep getting off track. Let's just finish up with these flashbacks before heading back to the main story. Again, because of this remnant, one night Foxy started to make his way through the house. The novel kind of plays it off like a dream, and also it was supposed to be a completed Foxy. In the book, it really happened, as his dad had to step in to deactivate him. And finally, after the restaurant's closed, Charlie's dad kills himself out of grief by making an animatronic to do it for him. And again, the novel just uses a blank Foxy skeleton. But the book goes out of its way saying that it was a patchwork creation, as the robots have been at Freddy's for years at this point. I draw attention to this because in the newer books, the frame that was used became Stitch Wraith. Again, it's these small details that really hit home how little the novel cared about the book. Oh, and the mall was actually supposed to look newer-ish, and the back alleys where Freddy was entombed was supposed to look bleak and run down. Like half-finished floors, leaky pipes. But again, focus. The group comes back a few more times, but one day runs into a security guard called Dave, who they manage to talk into not reporting them and tagging along. But it's soon revealed that he knows far more about the place than he's letting on, as he is William Afton, aka the purple guy, the original killer. And it's very interesting to see the spring bodysuit used in action, as this is long before he became Springtrap with the broken suit. Oh, and speaking of that, the Springlock model suits were discontinued after an incident of it closing on an actor, and it seems here that it was actually William who was trapped. It's kind of funny that if they're only a few minutes short of getting him out, so many people would not have died. Anyway, he kidnaps one of their group and monologues about it, and while they're set to puppet mode, a human can walk around in them like normal. He even does a little dance similar to Glitchtrap from Help Wanted. Just a neat little detail to point out. But if the spring locks fail, they turn back into animatronic mode, as the wires and pistons are put back in place. And in the book, he describes this in great detail, as he traps one of his victims inside it. The gears puncture into you, while you bleed and shake violently, before you're unable to even scream anymore. This paints a wonderful jigsaw-like image against something that the novel fails at. Oh, and it turns out that the golden model suits weren't the first ones that were made, as the diner deemed the original ones unsafe. Well, in comparison anyway. The first location, Fredbear's Family Diner, had other mascots that they used, which I believe were the other animals that showed up in Custom Night. The story finishes up with a mass push to save their friend, as Afton finally puts the other animatronics into free roam mode. And again, we get to the pacing problems, where a 20-minute sequence from the book, which has them separated and trying to hide from these things, is reduced down to a single page. And it just makes me mad trying to read this. There's a lot of time spent with them not knowing what to do, having them trapped in various places. Oh, and one of them gets a concussion, which means that he'll die if he loses consciousness, and this is just waved off in a single sentence in the novel. There's a real sense of dread and urgency to this. Oh, and also, I don't know if they ever made any of the other books into novels, because if you watch Game Theory, you know that there's a big twist that happens at the end of Book 3. And in Silver Eyes, there are a lot of details and hints to it. Even a line that Afton says to Charlie when he sees her, which again gets cut out. And finally, after a good and suspenseful sequence of the book and a laughably bad attempt at the novel, the group is surrounded by the 4 animatronics. And it's only then that the Golden Freddy suit shows up, aka the suit that houses the soul of their friend. Do the others finally stand down? William broke out of his bonds and got his suit back, and grabs Charlie by the neck, choking her and making a hostage, so he can finally escape as a cop finally breaks his way in. Again, I don't think in the novel they explained that they were actually sealed inside of it. But Charlie reaches back and trips his spring lock, letting him die from his own weapon. And after he finally stops moving, the other animatronics grab the suit and drag him into the darkness. This was a very interesting look back at this story from 5 years ago, seeing how much has changed. Obviously it's not canon with the games, as he dies in a very different way. But I can really see how this story would become a movie. I highly recommend you just skip the novel and read the book. But if for some reason you don't enjoy reading that much, just look it up on YouTube. There are plenty of people who made this into an audiobook about it. So, if you ever have some free time to kill, I suggest you give it a watch. Oh, and one last thing that I found at the last minute. It turns out that there's actually some fans that are making a real adaptation of the book into their own graphic novel. So, hopefully it lives up, and it'll have to be 1,000 times better than this stupid thing. And that about does it for this one. Since we did that one, I have actually read the other 2 ones, and I do have the copy of the second comic, and the third one I think is due out next week or so. So if you guys still want us to do those, well, you can give it a shot. The last book has a lot of interesting implications for the series, since it pretty much rewrites Afton's character. But we can go more about that later. I've spelled the wonderful rabbit hole that is the Twisted Ones, but anyway, If you have any other suggestions for shows, then please post it down in the comments below, and we'll try to get them as soon as possible. Again, sadly, no promises. But I hope to see you guys in the next one. Anyway, I'm Runya, remember to take life in moderation.